Hello, dear listener, and welcome to the Symposium podcast. This is my second interview with Tobias Taylor. If you haven't listened to the first episode, I would definitely recommend you to go and pick it up. Just to give you a quick run through, Tobias Taylor is a runner, among many other things, and he likes to go for really, really intense challenges. And one of these challenges is the Everesting. In the first episode, we talk about his first Everesting. And as if that was not enough, he decided to go for a double Everesting, making him the first person to attempt a double Everest in winter. To give you an idea of Tobias's achievement, I will read you some stats from the Everesting website. Tobias, on the 8th of December, completed a double Everesting, running for a distance of 259 kilometers for an elevation of 17,000 meters, for the duration of 68 hours, 42 minutes, and 32 seconds. The stats are really impressive, but it's nothing compared to hearing the story from Tobias. So without further ado, let's go to the episode, and I wish you a happy listening. You just went through your coffee like very fast.
Sorry.
Damn. No, I mean, it's not. I'm just, because I'm very, very sensitive to coffee.
Okay.
Like, if I drink it too fast, I would
Really?
just feel
I
jittery.
worked for 10 years in the coffee industry,
Oh, okay.
and so I have a lot of experience drinking coffee.
Okay. You had like a lot of free coffee.
A lot of free coffee to the point also that the latter end of it, the last 5 years, I was working for a coffee roastery, but heading up their marketing rather than directly making coffee. And so there were a lot of people making me coffee all the time. And you had to start to be really like picky on, no, I don't want a coffee, thank you. Like, I'm only going to have, 2 coffees a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really going to be choosy on what those are.
Okay. Ready to
But
go.
I really like hot drinks. And a lot of people don't mind when their coffee goes cold. And they drink it when it's cold. And the whole of the roastery team I worked with would just be normalized to that.
Drinking it cold, you mean?
Whereas
Yeah.
I wish it was endless, but it's just something about hot drinks.
Yeah, since I moved to the UK, I realized that as well. It was not such an important thing to me when I was living in Italy. But
Sure.
I feel like there is something to it when you drink a hot beverage and it just like warms you from the inside. Like one of the big things about coffee in the morning is just that feeling.
Yeah.
Just like pouring something into your body that's warm and just warming you from the inside. And like, yes, now I can start my day. And also, like we were talking before, since the weather outside is so cold, and not just in terms of temperature, also in terms of colors and in terms of it's not very welcoming.
Yeah.
At least like if you have that hot beverage in your hands, even just warming up your hands or like warming you from the inside, I feel like it makes a big difference. And also I have a theory that that's why tea is so big in the UK. That really, because sometimes I would just find myself making teas just because it's depressing outside.
Yeah, I feel like that is why the UK loves a hot drink. Because I think there's a level that it doesn't even have to be something like a nice coffee or a nice tea. Hot water, you get to a point where just hot water does the job,
Yeah, needs some warmth.
Yeah.
Because of course in Italy we drink warm tea as well, but it's a big thing, iced tea, like cold tea.
Sure.
I think that when I was living in Italy, most of my life I drank mostly cold tea because it's really refreshing in summer. And
Yeah, I think that, I don't know, there's just, when you get stripped down to the point where, I think that's part of the reason I like the things that like strip you down to your absolute. It's like going away so that you can come back, in the sense that the most pleasurable things are sleep when you've been denied sleep. Or, you get to a point where you could be offered almost anything in the entire world and you'd still choose sleep. Like once you're pushed to that absolute limit and you haven't slept for so long. And that's just kind of the same for like when you're freezing cold, or like the comfort of any kind of hot drink when it's really, really cold, or being able to sit down when you've been on your feet for a long time. Like all of these things become the most pleasurable things you could possibly imagine. And they're the simplest things. And it's so weird, this situation that you have to like push yourself to a place where those normal things that everyone has access to suddenly become them. Like, doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter what situation you're in, like no one's getting as much pleasure out of sleep as the person who has been denied sleep for that long, you know. I think that's what's really interesting about it.
Human beings are weird creatures because like you said, sometimes you just have something, and because you have it all the time, you will not give it value. But once you don't have that thing anymore, the absence of it increases the value of the thing. It's so weird. So things, it looks like things or experiences, or they don't have an absolute value. It's relative to the quantity that you have of it. So for example, like what they say is that a healthy person wants 1,000 things, but a man that's sick wants just one. And that's a quote that always makes me think. Like, maybe it's important sometimes to just see things in perspective and think that you have a lot of things that are valuable and you should appreciate, and not just get lost into, I want that this other thing. Like I want that car, I want that girl, or that woman, or that man, or that job, or
it's the unlimited desires that cloud your ability to kind of realize what you actually want.
So we should always appreciate our warm drinks. This is the best drink.
Drinking hot coffee. But you know, you sit here drinking really nice hot coffee, which is delicious, but it's all relative, right? If it was awful coffee, but you had been out surviving for a month in the Arctic, you know, it would be the difference between a terrible coffee and an incredible coffee would be negligible, right?
Yes.
It's a hot, tasty.
Well, if you have a really cushy life and you go to your coffee where you go usually, and the guy gets your coffee wrong, like slightly wrong, you would be mad at him.
Sure. Yeah, it's, you know, the Lamborghini once you've already got the Ferrari. Not that enjoyable.
But I get what you mean. What you're trying to say is that when you go through those really, really intense experiences, you get to the core of what's important.
I think it's such a realization that hits you in the face that the absence of things absolutely like creates the desire or the tempering of those things. And I think it's a really positive realization that the most pleasurable things are accessible to everyone. And that sounds like terrible saying that from a place of privilege, but I mean it in the sense that it's a realization that no matter what the privilege is, the things that will give you the most intense pleasure are those things once you take yourself to a point where you're like stripped bare of them, and those things are accessible to everyone, like sleep, like a hot beverage is accessible to most people in most scenarios, sitting down, you know.
So I would say to just give a kind of a context, because, you know, like we just start talking, but not everyone knows who you are and what you've done.
I don't think most people know how I sound.
Yeah, of course, but for those couple of people that don't. So we already had one conversation, and it was before you were going to do your challenge, your double Everest. And so we just sat and talked about the fact that you already had one double Everest, but it was not in winter.
No, I'd done a single Everest in the summer, and I was going for a double Everest, and alongside that was that 14 people had done a double Everest, but no one had done one in winter. So that was kind of like, if I was going to do a double Everest, why not go for something that no one had done before?
Yeah, it's interesting that we started the conversation with winter sucks.
Well, winter's actually great. I love winter. But the darkness can get to you for sure.
Yeah, like we were saying before, even when you're just going to work or through your everyday life, it makes a difference when it's darker outside and it's colder. So yeah, it's definitely a big challenge. Yeah, so how did it go?
Well, I mean, it went well in the sense that I managed to do it.
Okay.
It took longer than expected, and I was not prepared psychologically for what it would take.
Yeah, but can you ever get prepared for something of the sort?
I guess not.
You just have to go there and face it.
And I had done... There's kind of two ways to prepare for these things. One is getting your body in as good a shape as you can do. And for something that's predominantly just going up and down a hill, it's quite hard to do that in London. But psychologically preparing yourself for going through a period of suffering or something like that is, I think, quite important, and kind of prepping yourself to be in that state for an amount of time. And kind of not kind of fetishizing the enjoyment of it, but like taking some kind of pleasure and excitement from pushing yourself to a place you've never been before mentally, and kind of being interested as to what that will feel like, what will happen. And from that perspective, it was incredible. I experienced different levels of my mind that I didn't realize were there. So yeah, it went well, but went worse than I thought it was going to go.
Okay.
So I started off, and I'd put a big... Just to kind of put this out there, this was not a me on my own effort. I had the support of some incredible friends who were there the entire time, some amazing runners and friends who came out at all hours of day and night to do some running with me, give me some company. And I mean, that was huge, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I'd put this big, we'd done sort of a spreadsheet of support my friend had organised so that we were, there weren't big blocks of me just on my own. And the big scary patch was going to be night 2. So I was kind of aiming for 60 hours.
So I just stop you a second, sorry.
Yeah.
Just let's go again through the concept of Everesting.
Okay, yeah.
How does that work? And again, like, do you have like a time frame that you have to finish the challenge?
Yeah, okay. So there's some sick people who created this concept of Everesting, and it came from the cycling world. So the idea is that you pick a hill. It doesn't matter how high the hill is or how steep the hill is, but you go up and down your chosen hill as many times as needed, the same hill, just straight up and down, until you've accrued the sea to summit elevation of Everest. So it doesn't matter how long the hill is. So for some people, they'll pick a shallow hill and do much greater distance. Some people pick a really steep hill, do much less distance, but be going slower. There are very few rules. The rules are the hill has to exist as a segment on Strava, and you have to do complete segments of that hill so that, for example, if your hill takes you to a meter short of the Everest height, you'd have to do a whole nother segment of that hill just to legitimize you covering the sea to summit distance. And really the only other rule is you're not allowed to sleep. You can go as slow as fast as you want.
And you can sleep just at the end of your Everest.
So the stipulation to the no sleep is that if you're going to do more than one Everest, you get... It's kind of the best way to view it is you unlock 2 hours of sleep for every subsequent Everest. Mm-hmm. So if you're doing a double Everest, after you've done the first Everest, then you have these 2 hours you can sleep before you finish the second Everest. And then if you were to do another one, you'd unlock another 2 hours of sleep, which becomes a really interesting game because if you fall asleep, that's it, it's over. And you kind of have this, most big, long ultras, theoretically you can sleep as much as you want. Obviously the time's ticking, but there's this weird feeling that you have this, sand that's running down on you in terms of you having this ability to sleep. The longer you take, the slower you're going, the harder it becomes because you still only have this finite time you can sleep to complete it. So yeah, that's the concept. Obviously, the running world took this up after it became big within the cycling community, and the Everesting is reasonably popular. And then a few people started doing longer ones, so the double Everesting, which there's 14 people who've done it. 3 people have done a triple Everest. One person, actually, this guy, Tom Hollins, great runner in the UK, has done a vertical marathon, which is equivalent of almost 5 Everests. Yeah. So.
Wow. But you called it a marathon, so it's different than the Everesting because it means that, do you still have the same rules apply? Or?
Same rules. I am not actually certain whether Tom followed the Everesting rules for this, because the goal was to do a vertical marathon. So by that I mean that it's 42 kilometers in elevation gain. Mm-hmm. Everest is 8,848 meters. So this is, well, yeah, I think 4.7, something like that. But yeah, I don't know on the sleep and things like that what the season was. I think the key thing is figuring out that there's a load of challenges in terms of finding a hill that makes sense, because you want, is this balance of is the hill shallow enough that you can run, but then if it's steeper it's shorter and all these things, right? So the hill I chose in comparison to most other people is quite shallow. I think it averages 13-14% gradient, and the first section's very steep, so it's like a speed hike. Then it goes into a run, then it's a speed hike section, then a run, and then run down. So it breaks it up quite nicely from my perspective.
Yeah.
But to do the double Everest, it was at least 260 kilometers. And if you start thinking longer, imagining you were trying to do what Tom had done to do that, 4.7 Everest. So you're getting into, my quick maths isn't great, but 600 odd kilometers, which you'd basically want a steeper hill for anything longer, I think. So to compare it, basically not to just be like constantly talking about stats here, which isn't that interesting, but the double Everests that have been done range between, I think the fastest was about 37 hours, but the total distance was about 70 kilometers. Most of them range around 50 odd hours. Okay. Then the winter one I did was aiming for 60. It took 68 hours roughly, but it was also 260 odd kilometers, 270 maybe. So there's that balance of just picking what makes sense. Yeah. So they're hard to compare because everyone's doing them on different hills.
So the other Everesting that you've done, how long did it take you and how steep was the hill? And
so it was on the same hill.
Oh, okay.
It was on the same hill, and the single Everest took 26 hours.
26, and that was in summer.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see the difference there, because if you double it, it's 52. And,
yeah.
Well, like you said, it took you 68 this time. So do you feel like you were in better shape before, or actually doing it in winter made a big difference?
I was definitely in better shape for the winter, and I think the first Everest took me 28 hours. It's really hard to compare, and it's really hard to describe what the night does to you, because I'd set up, as we touched on, my friend had set up this spreadsheet of support and kind of what state I might be in, what time I wanted, all of these things that go out the window once you start doing any big project. And I'd put this big block in night 2 just called Welcome to Hell. And I was pretty scared basically of night 2 and how I'd be feeling and all of that kind of thing, because from other runs I was pretty familiar with going through the first night, and in my head I was like, I've got this, it's fine, no issues, no dramas. But what I didn't, and conceptually I also realized that the tough part of the winter isn't the weather. It could be nice, it could be bad, but I like bad weather. That's not the tough part. The tough part's the darkness. Yes. And like we touched on, I think before we started recording, the depths of winter, you get 8 hours of light in the day.
Yeah, by the way, you did it when the days were shorter.
Right.
Oh my God. Yeah, it was the hardest time.
So, and this is where within the Everesting world, they don't actually classify the difference between summer and winter attempts. But there's kind of like an Everesting Hall of Fame where you can see the stats on different people's Everests, when they did them, that kind of stuff. And based on the different hemispheres and stuff, the midwinter within other projects is always categorized as like the mid 3 months, so December, January, Feb. But yeah, the challenges of the darkness kind of really get to you. And I was aware of that going in, but I think it was going into night, or in the middle of night 1 when I was 8 hours into darkness, and realizing that I was still only halfway through the night, that really starts to eat at you. Yes. And it was, I had a mix of weather. That night was pretty torrential rain. And so it's just becomes a technical problem of, it's warm enough that it's really hard to run and wear waterproofs, but also you're trying not to get you got to stay warm because you're thinking of the long game and not getting too cold or anything like that. So it just becomes a tricky thing to manage when it's so torrential. The road itself and the track I was running up became a bit of a torrential river. It was kind of like one part where there was like a section of it which just felt like grade 3 rapids coming past. But it was nice to get a mixture of weather, because there were, in the days, there was some really nice sunny patches. But yeah, that first night kind of felt like it came out of knives coming out of the dark, to the point where towards the end of that night, I was these fairly, I've never felt this so intensely, but this feeling of self-sabotage. So, if I accidentally fell asleep, then I would have failed and I would get to stop running.
Oh my God, that's the most dangerous part. When your
and
mind...
these continued throughout, things like the hill finishes at a road going across the bottom. And it would be things like, if I accidentally ran in front of a car, then, I wouldn't be too injured and end up in hospital, but people would be like, he was so tired, he accidentally did it and had to stop running. It's all these type of things which just really start playing on your mind.
Nobody would ever know.
I was running with my friend Rob, who actually, hope he doesn't mind me saying, but he got hit by a cow when he was running up on Dartmoor at one point, just from behind. And even to the point where there's a section of this hill where there's a big field of cows, and I was like, maybe we accidentally stray in there and get half trampled. But he wasn't a fan of that suggestions. But yeah, I did spend a lot of time trying to come up with interesting self-sabotage options. And yeah, just making it through that first night without sleeping was really, really tough. It got to the point where I think it becomes so hard, and actually a lot of people struggle with this. You get 30%, 20% into a big project and you feel awful. And it feels so much worse because you think, if I feel this bad now, how can I possibly finish? Yes. If you're over halfway, if you're in the last 40%, 30%, 20%, you're kind of like, of course I feel horrific, but I can still power through, right? But when you feel that bad early on, everything's playing around in your head, and it's really, really tough to kind of push through that, because you think, I should be feeling strong and good at this point to kind of continue. And I'd realised that I had a serious lack of training on downhills, because I'd moved to London, was doing some incline treadmill, but not doing any downhills. And obviously, running down that amount of hill really destroys your knees and your quads and that kind of thing if you're not used to it. And as much as people say there are hills in London, I keep asking, but they're not hills. So that had begun to happen, and basically hit a point where I think to put it in context, the hill is 1.1 kilometers roughly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, someone can do more accurate maths on this, but I think it was 260 to 270 kilometers and 114 ups and downs the hill, or at least 114 up and 113 down. So, and the hill is 156 meters. So
When you say 156 meters, you mean in what terms?
In total elevation
elevation
gain. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. So each time you go up, that's 156 meters ticked off. For the Everest, it's 8,848.
Dividing
Double that
it.
for 2 Everests. So 114 times 156 meters should cover the double Everest.
Mm-hmm.
If I've somehow done the maths wrong with that, then nobody tell me. There were several times throughout I was like, can someone just check that we have calculated this right? But yeah, for a lot of people, the toughest patch is a couple of hours before dawn. That patch of the night where you've gone through a lot of it and it's not yet light, and then when dawn breaks, everyone starts to feel better.
Yeah, that must feel amazing when you just see the sun coming up.
I mean, if the sun comes up.
Yeah, that's the problem.
But for me, and this happens consistently, I seem to really struggle in that dawn patch. So that few hours where it's still kind of developing, and I guess you're going from, it's dark, I'm using a head torch, to the head torch isn't doing much, but also it's not that bright and it's still kind of waking up. That's my really dead zone. Really don't like that, and I really feel tired until it's properly light, an hour or so into the light, when it's kind of, I've woken up at that point. Maybe it's just slow rising and all of that. But yeah, towards the end of the first night, I had gotten really sleepy. I had got to a point where two ups and downs of the hill were becoming, I was stopped, staring at my legs, screaming at them to move. And it was this odd experience of feeling like I had like a muscular issue that was like, that they just wouldn't move, right? And that was, imagine you're 30% into something like this, and you can't even get your legs to move slowly.
Yeah.
And so I was in a really low place, to the point where I think it was taking me an hour to go up and down the hill once. That's...
So did it actually take you an hour, or you were thinking it took you an hour?
It was actually taking me an hour.
Because you kept stopping and
I was moving really slowly, to the point where can go up and down the hill in 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And at a more, most of this for the long distance was kind of calculating that start off with a big chunk at 20 minutes up and down, and then 22 minutes up and down, and obviously that was dragging out. But it shouldn't really be pushing past 30 minutes up and down. Mm-hmm. So it taking an hour, I think there were two for 2 hours basically, where it was just bad. And basically...
In that case, can anyone call you and speak with you? Because if they notice that it's taking you a long time, they're like, what's happening to him? and they can call you and just motivate you? Or
Sure.
you
Yeah,
said that your
yeah.
friend was with you. Was he still with you, and did he speak to you?
Yeah, so my two really close friends were incredible. They basically they covered the entire time I was doing it between the both of them, trying to get sleep here and there. And what had happened is Andrew was there camped out in his van on the side, providing a little like crew stop almost right on the hill, had everything I could possibly want, you know. And we'd had a conversation, and we were like, yeah, get a couple of hours sleep, you know, as a gift. But so this was right before the dawn. He's having a little nap, and I'm just getting into a worse and worse place. And to the point where I think I had decided that basically to cope with the sleep deprivation, I decided to not have caffeine for as long a time as possible. So I thought all throughout the first day and night, let's try not having caffeine. And then pushed out as far as possible. Probably pushed it out a bit further than I needed to. Hadn't had caffeine all through this first night. And I was thinking, I just really need like a coffee right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was frustrated. I was falling asleep, thinking about falling asleep, right? And I think every time I went past the van where Andrew was sleeping, I was trying to make as much noise as possible to accidentally wake him up. Really cruel of me. And then after all of this, my friend Gabe came out, and it was a bit of a ray of sunshine. I was in a really, really low patch, and he basically did a pip up and down the hill with me, I think. And I was like, oh, this is great. Let's have a coffee break now. And so I woke Andrew up. I was like, can we get some coffee? So this is probably like 8, 9 a.m. at this point. After the first night, it's light and that kind of thing. But yeah, that was a really, really tough night to go through.
So then after the coffee, you felt better?
I felt way better, yeah.
And your body started working again?
My body started working again. Obviously, the light's a bit of a motivator. You can see there's so many things that.
So it was not. You didn't have any issues with your muscles. It was a mental thing, because once you got your coffee, you started to be functional.
Yeah. I think that it's definitely, obviously your muscles tired. They're a little bit destroyed, but like it mainly comes down to your brain at that point. And there's like. Throughout the whole thing, the downhill was significantly worse than the uphill, which is a weird thing to think about given the goal is to do the uphill. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the downhill really was painful.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's the 50% of the run, so.
Yeah, and obviously going uphill, you can kind of temper the speed you're going up and the how you're moving to kind of make it more enjoyable. Mm-hmm. Whereas the downhill is... you're almost trying, what you're doing is trying to slow yourself down.
Yeah, just
and so you're constantly trying to and there's patches, especially the point right at the bottom where it's just like, it's quite steep, and it's. Yeah.
Have you tried doing it backwards? Just like going downhill backwards.
Yeah, I don't think I was coordinated enough at that point to make that work. But yeah, it was interesting, like thinking back through these different patches, because I'd go from absolutely thinking that there was no way that this was going to happen to suddenly being okay and just trying to kind of make as much use of that as possible whilst I was feeling good. A huge kind of benefit to this situation, unlike a race, is that I basically could have any food I wanted all the time.
Yes.
So, every kilometer I'm passing, or less, every time I go up and down the hill, I'm passing my, in quotes, aid station, and I'd have a load of food, drinks, burgers, so like cereal, like the opportunities were endless, right, for food. People bringing chips, people bringing incredible pastries.
Oh my God, that's a huge motivation.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So for anyone listening who is in the southwest, Cremo's in Ashburton it's the best pastries outside of London, possibly including London.
Oh, wow. That's a big shout out.
Yeah. And the funny thing was, we had organised to get some pastries on the first and second morning. So kind of did a pre-order that friends picked up. And this was not just for me, but everyone coming out, so that there were kind of pastries all around. And there were just some great moments around the pastries. I feel like a friend, Tim, came out and we were eating... It was a mince pie, but not like a mince pie that you've just super creative. I can't even remember what it looked like. You wouldn't say this is a mince pie. We're just eating mince pies at one point in the night, I think on the second night. And then after the day I woke up after the run, there were pastries left over. There was like cheesecakes left over. Mm-hmm. I basically ate nothing but pastries from Cremo's for the whole day after. Which
yeah, I guess that after a feat of that sort, you can just allow yourself whatever you want.
Yeah, I think often you are so you're so sick of the food you were eating in a race that you can't even look at it. You want something completely different. But this was just, it had got to the point where they weren't even recognizable as individual pastries. There was just a mix of pastry related stuff and cheesecake. And I was just spooning all this stuff into my mouth. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Yeah, so a big theme was this self-sabotage, which was a tricky thing or was just consistently playing around. And then obviously...
So just one question.
Yeah.
So you told me that the first night was really tough. You didn't know if we were going to make it through.
Yeah.
Then towards the morning, around 9 a.m., 10 a.m., you managed to get a coffee and you felt better and you started going. So did you sleep? When did you get to sleep? And when did you finish your first Everest and you unlocked those 2 hours of sleep? Yeah. And did you use them?
Yes. So I started at 9 a.m. on Friday morning. And this is sort of mid-December-ish. Started at 9 a.m. on the Friday, ran, that's pretty much taking advantage of all the light, ran through the night. So we're 24 hours in. Once I got the coffee, was feeling much better. It must have been early afternoon then that I finished the first Everest. So that was still in the sunshine, feeling good, been dreaming of, I'd gone through that night questioning whether I could even make it through the first Everest. That's where it was getting to, right? Yes. Couldn't, that patch where I was struggling with my legs and my head. I was thinking there's no way I'm going to make it through the first Everest. So then I finished that. And by the time I finished that, it was light. I was feeling good.
And also, it sounds like it was around the time that you finished your first Everesting.
Yeah, it was a couple hours more, yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, 28 hours, which would mean, 1 p.m. in the light. And to put that into perspective, the next Everest took me 40 hours.
Yeah, it took you longer. Oh my God.
You can imagine, obviously, you getting slower and all of those things. But yeah, the theme throughout was that I kept getting to a stage where I couldn't imagine me finishing. And I'd accept, if I push to 60 hours, if I push to 40 hours in, if I push to 60% through what I imagined doing, I'd done the first Everest, that's just shy of 9,000 meters. What if I push to do 10,000 meters, 10 vertical kilometers? That sounds fun. That's incredible. That was about, I think, that it meant that I would have done 100 miles, 10 vertical kilometers. It sounds like it was an exciting enough thing to be I'd be happy with that. Let's just get to that. Let's get that done.
Yeah, it's still a milestone.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess it's so important to have these smaller things because trying to look at the big picture, it's just too vast. You can't imagine how you could possibly get there. So yeah, but that was the theme throughout, even to the point where I was convinced for a long time that I would finish at 80% of the goal. And I was totally happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's
funny because last time we were talking about the same thing. We were talking about having really big goals, and sometimes they get overwhelming. And we concluded that actually one of the best strategies is just have small milestones,
Yeah.
like break it down,
Yeah.
because otherwise you just get lost thinking about that really, really far away thing that you will never reach.
Yeah.
While if you have like a smaller milestone, that's...
Yeah, I think it's the twofold thing of like, you need to have something that's inspiring enough to keep you going and to get you started initially. But then basically just like totally ignoring that thing and just focusing on what's right in front of you, because it's like you can't picture how you could possibly get there.
Yeah. That's interesting that you applied it. We were saying the same thing last time, and it's interesting that you saw that playing out in a 68
hours.
Yeah, 68 hours. Like that's like what happens in your life as well, usually. Like if you have like a really big goal, like you just have to set that goal to get you through the everyday nitty-gritty, and forget about it and just like focus on the day. And
I think it's so incredible when you like strip yourself down that much, how you go through every possible span of emotions that you go through in your entire life, just condensed into a short amount of time. Although it doesn't feel that short amount of time, the time is that short.
So you say that you go through all the emotions. So I can imagine that two main emotions are happiness and fear. So did you ever go through anger?
Do you know what? I'm not a very angry person.
Okay.
But I think I got to a point where I guess you're like stripped down to the point where your things are irritating and frustrating.
Yes.
So it will be like internally your voice is like, I can't believe this person doesn't have the exact food I want ready for me when I want it,
Yes.
I can't believe that my friend who's sacrificed their entire long weekend to come out and support me and just live on the side of a hill and get no sleep and care for me is trying to have 2 hours of sleep and I want a coffee.
Yeah.
But this happened towards the end where I think that I asked for another bottle of water and I was given a bottle of water and I was like, I couldn't believe that they didn't understand that it was supposed to have like whatever mix of electrolytes in or that kind of, and it's things like that where right at the end, basically I had this pain develop in my right calf that I think for about 200 kilometers, it was just a stabbing pain in the back of my right calf. Got progressively worse and worse and worse and worse. Would go away for a bit, come back.
That was second day.
I guess it probably, it feels like it was somewhat present for the majority of it. I can't recall exactly when it started, but towards the end, it was so bad that I was trying to do all sorts to kind of stretch it out and that kind of things. And it basically got to the point where I was like, I need to tape it with something that will surely make it feel better. And exactly this, it's like, I can't believe no one has tape on them, And it's just like, can someone please tape something around my leg? Which we found some kind of tape. I don't know what it was in the end. And actually, after I finished, my right leg around, with a kind of epicenter around my right calf swelled up to the point that it was like putty. I could shape it. It was really weird. And it took kind of 10 days to go down. But yeah, so that's the frustration more than anger. Like a petulant child, really.
That's understandable.
And what was the fear? I was scared of the nights. So after the first night, I was freaked out by the possibility of another night. I was in my head, I was thinking, if night one was that bad,
please, I don't want to go through it again.
I basically, as soon as it gets dark, I'm going to sit down and start crying. That was my headspace. And night two, I think night two was better. Night two is when I first decided to have some sleep. Even when it got dark, I felt better than I imagined I would feel. So I kept pushing. I want to say it was about 11 p.m., which is getting, if it gets dark at 4, you're already a chunk of the way through the night. Or gets dark 4, 5-ish. I got 45 minutes sleep. So this was essentially take my running gear off, get into a van, curl up, get some sleep, to the point where I'm like, I'm not sleeping yet. Don't start counting my 45 minutes. And then ask people to wake me 45 minutes later. It's really tricky to know what the best sleep strategy is. After that, I had only 10-minute naps, which I think work really well for me. I think that's a good amount. And that was keep all your running gear on. You want to keep your muscles warm. So it's like kind of poke yourself into a bed in a van, keep your feet out of the van, but get some, someone start a timer, get 10 minutes sleep, and you wake up, it feels like you haven't slept. Or you wake up and it feels like you try and convince yourself you have had a full night's sleep, you brush your teeth, you do all the, all the things like that. So the sleep strategy started then. So it was 45 minutes. And all throughout this, different friends were coming out to run, like sacrificing their nice Christmassy weekends, friends coming from Christmas parties, like straight afterwards, friends coming out at 5 a.m, middle of the night, running from their houses to come and run. It was just incredible. People coming to support, come say hi, come, on the way to things, on the way from things, they'd come over, go and fulfill some kind of commitment they had, then come back. It was honestly amazing.
Yeah, I can imagine it. And also just breaks the monotony of you running, like seeing familiar faces, friendly
a new
faces.
Face, something to break it up, having a new conversation with someone, or even to the point where you just don't have the ability to really talk and just someone can talk at you or just be with you, you know? Because I think that's kind of harder. It's one thing when you're feeling good and someone can have a nice chat and a catch up with you. But, one of my friends spent a huge chunk of the last part with me. And there was a patch of that where I spent an hour sobbing whilst running.
Oh.
I got to a point where, this is jumping past another important point, but basically it was as if inside my mind had gone white. I was internally screaming.
Wait, when was this? This was the second day.
Let's go back.
Let's start from the start. So you started at 9 a.m. on a Friday.
Yeah.
You went through the first day.
Yeah.
It was tough. The toughest part was at night.
The night, yeah.
Where you just thought that you couldn't get through the night, and you were also thinking, if I'm already struggling this much, my first night, how can I manage to finish this challenge?
Yeah.
But then you got through the night, you managed to get to, you said 9 a.m, and you got your coffee, you felt energized, and you start running again. Yeah. So,
big shout out to Voyager Coffee, just saying that's totally.
So it's a Voyager Coffee and creamy.
Voyager Coffee and creamy. So that's all you need to run significant distances. Just saying. So then
So after that, you start running, and how did the day go?
So that second day went really well. It was actually a lovely day, I think, if I recall correctly.
And the first night was the night when it was raining, and you just
really
had streams down there.
At no point was it particularly cold. Mm-hmm. It was raining really badly through the first night, really, really badly. Then it was dry, a little bit of sun, I think, on the second day. I think maybe the first day was really nice weather. Mm-hmm. Then into the night, bad weather. Then into the day was okay. It's so confusing trying to think how many days there were. I think the second day was pretty nice as well.
Okay, so you kept running throughout the day.
And then the second night was when I started sleeping.
Okay.
So 11 p.m, I did 45 minutes.
Yes.
And then I think towards the end of that night, I did 10 minutes.
Okay.
So the second night, I'd unlocked the sleep and I got 55 minutes total.
So you said that you can sleep, you unlock 2 hours of sleep. Oh, because then you can split up those 2 hours.
You can do it however you want, yeah.
Oh, okay, get it. So you
can sleep
use 45 minutes of your 2 hours and then like you had...
And then 10 minutes more that second night.
Okay.
The second night, I don't remember I probably remember this incorrectly, but I think it went better than the first night.
Okay, you were not there. Your body was running.
What did happen was...
But what happens in that case? Do you see yourself just from a third point of view, perspective? Or... Is it like when you're really, really drunk that you don't remember what happened? Like you're still functional doing things?
It's just more of a blur, I think. You know, I was very much tired on my feet, stumbling along with other people, which was great, you know, make sure that I'm not actually falling asleep, to the point where and there's actually some great photos from this run. So Andrew, who was there in his van helping crew, took some amazing photos and some good drone footage, but all sorts of friends took different shots. My friend Marnie came by, I think a couple of times, but he came by early on and got some lovely, lovely shots. But there's a shot of me lying on the road, and this is when I'd basically said, look, I'm about to fall asleep on my feet. I'm lying down right now, and time me for 1 minute.
1 minute.
And then I'm going to get back up and start running.
Mm-hmm.
The sad thing is I didn't fall asleep. I was just like lying there on the ground. But I mean, it was some respite.
How can you sleep for 60 seconds? That's
well,
impossible.
I was that tired. I just assumed I would lie down and absolutely fall asleep immediately.
Uh-huh.
But alas, it didn't work like that. I guess at this point I had a lot of adrenaline and caffeine flowing through my body as well, although I was feeling super, super tired. So yeah, so that was pushing through that night, and then I decided to have another 10 minutes of sleep. And
second night was not raining.
I don't know when it started raining, but it was raining at the dawn, because I was fully waterproofed up and all of that. So after the second night, this is coming into Sunday, my friend Jen came out every night at 5 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
No, 2 of the nights at 5. Anyway, she appeared like
angel.
Like an angel.
Angel figure.
Like a hallucination out of...
With the Cremo pastry.
Yeah. Why does Cremo's not open until 9, 10 a.m., you know? Yeah, so she came out super early on, which was lovely, because that's the patch I struggle with the most. So I was running with her, and then, I mean, everyone's probably listening to this thinking I'm remembering all this incorrectly, and that's probably true when people came out and visited. But basically there was a patch where I'd gotten to a point where I'd gone through all these different emotions. I thought I was only going to make it this far, constantly having this, okay, I'll just get this far, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And I had reduced to an average speed that was slow enough that I thought there's no way I can make it to the finish on the amount of sleep I have left for me, which was like 55 minutes.
Because you don't have a time limit.
There's no time limit. That's why it's quite a sick game, because
so it can even take you 100 hours.
It can take you 100 hours if you
manage to not sleep. Okay.
And so that's why it as a challenge, it's weird, because when you're running a long distance, usually you have this, I feel awful, but I've just got to make it to that next checkpoint, to the finish. It's somewhere in the distance in the future. Whereas this is very much like I can stop at any point.
Yeah.
And that's why it becomes this like weird game.
It is. It's
weird. And you're not
because
going anywhere.
You would think that if you have someone that's keeping you accountable, it's worse, because, you know, there is someone that will judge you or whatever. But it's actually worse when you are the one keeping yourself accountable, because you really can give up whenever you want. Yeah. Nothing will happen.
And it feels like a sick game that's being played, right? Because you're not going anywhere. There's no destination. And so it feels it's very challenging, I think, as a concept because of that. And the way we were doing this is on the first Everest before, there was a great idea to use pages of a book
yes.
to ferry them up one by one so that we didn't mess up how many times I'd gone up and down the hill because it's based on the actual hill height, not on what your GPS has said you've done, which might be slightly off. And if the GPS is measuring an extra, because you might be doing extra because you're overshooting it a little bit at the top and bottom of the hill, but that doesn't count in the sense of this. So you've got to make sure that you're counting correctly. And if you're doing over 100 of these, if you're only, a couple of meters out, then that could mean that you think you've done a whole extra hill or something like that. So basically what I was doing is I had a book at the bottom and I was tearing out a page, taking it to the top, leaving it at the top.
What was the book? Because last time we were talking about it, but you haven't decided yet.
We opted for A Snail on the Slope.
Nice.
Which is a book by the Strugatsky brothers, Arkady and Boris, and yeah, it seemed apt.
Was it mainly for the title, because of the title, or also the story it's related to?
Do you know what?
Running?
We had this long list of books, a bunch of them. It was crowdsourcing names for books and things that were kind of playfully jabbing at this. So I'm just trying to think what we had, things like Dante's Inferno and Paradise Lost and The Places I've Cried in Public, all those kind of things. And Snail on the Slope seemed kind of got the vote as the most apt. It had actually been on my shelf to read for quite some time, and I've heard good things about it. So
Is it a children's book?
It is not a children's book.
Okay.
No, it's a loosely science fiction book written by Soviet science fiction writers about, roughly speaking, I don't know why I'm trying to explain this book when I haven't read it, but go look it up, guys. I think it's about the kind of meaningless of people's attempts at things in a loose way. But
wow.
So that's the book we'd chosen. Had written in various bits and bobs throughout the book to try and kind of motivate and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was taking, had a tub at the bottom, a tub at the top to keep it dry. So it's in this plastic tub. Even realizing things like if it takes you a minute to tear the page out and put it in the 30 seconds at the bottom, 30 seconds at the top, that's an hour and a half.
Oh my god.
So even just trying to be efficient in getting the pages out and things like that, it's kind of crazy when you're doing something long like this that's repetitive, that time really starts to get at you. But yeah, so...
But it's a good thing that you had a physical thing to keep track of how many times you were going up and down, because towards the end where you lost track of what was happening. Because if it was just that you had to press a button, probably you could have just forgotten.
Well, that's the thing. I actually thought I would be in a state where I'd kind of suddenly think, wait, am I going up or down the hill right now? And then at least I could check that if I had the page on me, I was going up. If I didn't have it on me, I was going down. All those kind of things. It would be, I had a place in my running pack where I was putting the pages, but then there were a few times where I'd randomly put it in a different place. And, I'd get to the top and I'm like, did I not get a page? What is happening? And then I'd find it. All good kind of training to realize that, like, very easy things become quite complex and hard at that point.
So we arrived at, you went through your second day.
Yeah.
Throughout the day, it was fine. It was okay.
No.
Then like at night, you decided to sleep around 11 p.m.
Yes, yeah.
45 minutes. Then you went through the night and you slept again 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And towards the morning, like your friend came to run with you.
Yeah.
And
so my friend Jen had come to run.
Yeah.
And then basically what happened is, I think I'd verbalized to everyone, at least it felt like that. I don't know if I had, but I was quite clear that I was going to finish basically 80% of the run, and that was it. I'd be done. And so that's the only goal I had in my head. I was like, let's very slowly push it out until I finish that 80% of the run.
Did you tell them this before you started the run or during the run?
No, at like near about this point, right?
Okay.
Through the second night, I think.
Yes.
It was at a pace which was slower than I wanted. I felt overall worse, all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at a point, and this is a really interesting patch, where I was running. I'm pretty certain this was Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably 70 odd percent in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm running with Jen, who'd come out, and then my friend Rob also was there. So I'm running with both of those. I've got my waterproofs on, so it must have been pretty rainy. We're moving really reasonably slowly. And then in my head, I was completely at peace, accepting. I felt great about the fact that I had pushed to this point. It'd been so much more challenging. I'd gone through all these different stages that I wasn't expecting of exploring my mind. I would hit that 80% and that would be it. That would be finished. And this weird thing happened where there was almost takeover in my head where I died and someone else took over.
Oh.
And I have never experienced anything like this before. And
Me neither.
it was just this voice that was like, nah, we want this. And then someone else. It was not like another person. It was like, okay, you can't manage this.
So I would take over.
We're upgrading. This is like a version 2.0 or whatever at this point. Completely took over, and I was in a lot of pain, and it completely overrode my pain signals. I felt completely fine. I'd gone from being pretty out of it to really cogent. I felt super clear in terms of what I needed to do. I was suddenly like very clear with verbalizing what I was going to do and the directions I needed. So it was like, okay, I'm going to be moving much faster. In fact, I think at this point I'd suddenly started moving much faster. I'm moving at the speed I was moving right at the start of the run.
Okay. So it was around 20 minutes per.
Yeah. And I'm in heavy waterproofs, things like that. It's raining, and I'm like, I can't do this in this, so I'm just going to get wet. I need to take these off. So it's verbalizing. Waterproofs are coming off. I need to eat more. I need to just chug some food down to fuel it. And I was eating really well throughout this whole thing. And then the third aspect was like, okay, someone needs to tell Meg, my other really close friend who was kind of leading the crew aspect of this and organizing everything, to get me some painkillers. And suddenly I was moving really well. I mean, that didn't last that long, but it was such an odd experience.
So did this part of your mind or of yourself take over because you decided that you want to go over the 80%?
Yeah, as in,
just like you
it didn't feel like I decided that. It felt like another version of me decided that. I was not in control.
Because you were thinking, okay, if I get to 80%, that's great. I
decided I was happy with
content.
That. Yeah.
And then something else took over and like, no, actually, we're getting to the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
really weird experience, because I don't feel like I had any, I made no decision as part of that. There was me finishing 80%, being happy. And at this point, we hadn't done that. It was 70 odd percent in, I think.
So how long did this last?
How long did it last?
This new conviction.
It lasted really well, actually, because then it was going into the light. So it lasted through the day. The day got really nice. Some other people from the running community came out, which was amazing. It was just a really nice experience. Basically breezed past the 80% into the last 20%. And at that point, it was very clear that I was going to finish.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a lot of pain, struggling, but convinced I was going to finish.
Did you get your painkillers?
There's a story around this.
Oh,
You know,
no.
I did get some painkillers, but I think I got some like paracetamol. So obviously, when you're doing a lot of exercise, you're not supposed to take ibuprofen because your stomach needs to be full, basically, and usually you don't have that much food going on, so it's kind of, you're supposed to avoid ibuprofen. But by the evening, so this is night 3, where again I was really scared, convinced that
Oh no!
I wasn't.
Here we go again.
Yeah. I was like, what? I basically was like, there is a place beyond hell, and it's got to be night 3. You know, this is like what lies in night 3. So I think there was like some fear and some interest.
Yeah. Were you hopeful in the sense of you were thinking it cannot be worse than night 1 and night 2, or were you thinking this can actually be worse? And
Well, I was convinced I was going to finish, but there was some intrigue as to how I would feel.
mm-hmm.
But there was also some, because I actually had a really nice day.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it was quite nice weather, and it felt there was quite a few people came out. It felt like some nice community. Overall, I was actually feeling really good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it wasn't till the darkness, it got really bad in that night. But I also think that I didn't think, in the end, I pretty much went through the entire 3rd night.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I finished at around 5:30 in the morning.
5:30 in the morning. Okay.
So yeah, there must have, I mean, that's the majority of the few more hours until the light, but I think in my head I thought I would finish sooner than that. And just to put this in perspective, Meg, who was heading up my crew, was most incredible person. She's starting work Monday morning.
Oh my God.
And we're still on the hill at 5:30 in the morning. You know, and she's gone through a whole long weekend, barely any sleep. So there's definitely an aspect of these things that they take so much, and they require sacrifices from a lot of people to make it happen.
Yeah. Also, just seeing people around you supporting you and showing that they care, and it proves that you're not a crazy person that's doing something for no reason. Because like if you're doing it and people are willing to support you, and they're there with you, it means that it has a meaning. It is important.
Yeah.
It means something.
Yeah.
So that's a huge boost.
And all they get is you complaining that there's not enough sauce on your burger, you know? It's not a good deal. It's not a good deal. So maybe they're the crazy ones. But yeah, so it was basically going into night 3 was attrition. And it was because I did 3 sets of 10 minutes of sleep. So I'd had the 55-minute sleep, I had the 45 minutes plus 10 minutes in night 2. And then night 3, I had 30 minutes in 3 sections.
Okay.
And so it was basically pushing until I was just like, I need some sleep. Get the 10 minutes, push until I could go no further. I think I got over 100 hills in, so I needed to do 114. I think I got the 100 done and continued to push as much as I could until maybe I did 102, so I had like 12 left. I think this is how it went. Then I had the 10 minutes sleep. Then I managed another 6, got the 10 minutes sleep. Then I only managed another 3, got the 10 minutes sleep. And so at this point, like, I knew I was going to finish, but suddenly you think, oh, you just got to go up and down the hill 3 times, 6 times. Like, these aren't big things, but they become so big because it just seems like quite insurmountable. And during this time, I can't remember at what point, but I was in so much pain with my leg that I was running with my friend Emma, and I basically said, I think Meg was trying to get a couple of hours sleep, or she'd gone to grab some food, something like that. And this petulant child coming out, I was like, I need some painkillers. Someone tell Meg I need some painkillers. And I'd go up the hill, and she wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd go down the hill and go up, and I'd be like, where is she?
Where are you?
Throw my toys out the pram. And when she was in my eyes, I'm like, finally, you're here, which is ridiculous. And I was like, great, now I'm having some painkillers.
Mm-hmm.
And she was there, and she's like, here's one codeine tablet. And I'm like, that's not enough. No, okay, actually, trying to rethink this. I think maybe the codeine I'd had earlier on in the day, the one codeine tablet,
Mm-hmm.
when I'd like had that rebirth and was cogent. And so at this point I was like expecting more codeine. And I had this standoff with Meg where Meg was like, I'm not giving any, you're not having any codeine. And I was like, give me the codeine. And Emma was there. I think my younger sister was there. Everyone just like watching this interaction, and just me being like, give me the codeine.
Were you aggressive?
I don't think I was aggressive. I was just frustrated, and she's trying to offer me some like paracetamol, and I'm like, this is not going to touch the sides. Like codeine at a minimum. I don't think I took. I mean, I may be remembering this incorrectly, but I don't think I took this. And I think Emma was like, "Come on, let's just like pull me away, deal with this child," and we just continued.
Because you were like, it's either codeine or nothing, and in the end you just left.
I think so. Yeah, okay. I think so. And that's what I mean. Like the level of friendship I have is amazing. The fact that like I still have friends.
Yeah, and also they know what it means to get to that point, and also they saw your transformation and how you changed, and they know how tough it was for you mentally. So probably they're also understanding.
I also think
he's not in himself. Like,
there's a fun aspect of like as a crew, and I've actually had the great opportunity to do some support and crewing this past month. It was amazing to see my friend Jen. She absolutely smashed her first 100-miler down on the Cornish coast, a really tough 100-miler that she completed in 29 hours. Her target was 30, and she had tremendous foot pain, struggling with eating the entire time, and just like, absolutely smashing through it. And it's so great to see that. So it's the balance when you're on a crew that you're doing everything you can. You're like, you want that person to succeed. But there's also an aspect where you're as a crew, you're out potentially in the dark, cold rain, and it's kind of like, if this person gives up, like we can go home, you know. So I imagine
just throwing stones at them. Stop.
I imagine there's an aspect of my close friends thinking, look, like I've got work coming up. You said this would take you like 60 hours absolute max. You know, that's what I committed to. Mm-hmm. And now we're over 60 hours. We're into night 3. Like, I could just leave you here.
Were you thinking that while you were running?
I wasn't thinking that, no. But okay. I think, I imagine that's got to be going through your head being like, if this person just gives up, we can all go home, you know? So I think there's those two things where you're trying to do everything. It's a lot of problem solving as a crew because your runner is like a petulant child, or they don't know what can fix their problems. And Meg and I have crewed each other for a bunch of different runs, and it's, you know, having someone there who kind of knows what you're going through and can try and fix the problems that you can't fix yourself is incredible. You know, I've been running in Snowdonia and unable to eat for a long, long time. And Meg's cooked sauteed potatoes, and there at the crew point being like, I've cooked these nice things, and you being like, oh, I'm disgusted by that. And just, so it's being able to deal with like consistent rejection I've got all these nice things for you.
Wow.
And you're just like, I feel sick. Please take those out of my sight. You're trying to force these delicious things down your runner's throat. So there's that balance that I think's... But yeah, so after this interaction where Meg, the keeper of the codeine, refused me my drugs, I just carried on. So yeah, I mean, slowly and in a lot of pain. And this was whilst during the time that I was angrily waiting for Meg to show up, because how dare she try and get a few hours sleep or some food on night 3 of supporting. I had spent an hour traumatizing my friend Emma by... This is back to what we started touching on earlier. I was just sobbing, the deepest crying you can imagine, where it's just these like body-wrenching sobs. And I was trying to push through the pain. So I was running, I think, but just like dripping tears onto the path.
And this was day 3.
This was night 3.
Night 3. And were you sobbing because your calf was hurting too much, or were you sobbing because you...
I think I thought that the run would end, and I had all this emotion that would like boil up, and I just finished the run and break down sobbing. But it hit me earlier than that. It was a combination of the pain, but really it's just like the mental trauma you're in, basically, right? That you've had enough. My mind had gone, I'd gone through the self-sabotage, the overcoming that, the rebirth, pushing through pain, all of these different stages, countless times setting targets and thinking I'd get no further than that. Convinced early on I was not even going to make it through the first Everest. And at this point, my mind had nothing more, right? It was like it had all gone white inside. And I was screaming internally, what more do you want from me? And this was directed at the hill, basically, and life in general. Like, I have nothing more to give. This is it. Because I'd already got to that point where I was like, I have given everything. I'd be happy to get 80% through, and accepted that. Then this other part had taken over, and so many stages pushing past where you think your limit is. Yeah, so at that point I was just crying and running. Totally acceptable thing to do, guys. And my friend Emma was just incredible. She was just basically like there and present, and it's the equivalent of, I think, when you're going through something really tough in any area of your life, it's the equivalent of someone being like, they're not trying to fix the situation, because you usually you can't. It's just like, I'm going to sit in the dark with you. And so just having someone there whilst you go through this trauma, because at that point, you don't care what you look like, what's going on, just crying until I ran out of tears. I cried for an hour. And this is not just a little tear. This is I think what started was your body pushes to a point where it's really hard to keep warm, in the sense that your core is, you'll be really warm whilst you're moving, and the minute you stop, you start shivering and you're really cold, because you have so depleted your body of energy, it's struggling to keep warm. And so, the few times that I stopped to sleep, I was wrapped up in every possible blanket available. And then you start going again and you warm up, right? So you don't want to be wearing too many clothes, that kind of thing. So I'm probably, I think I'm in a puffy jacket. I'm running very slowly. And I think, it's that shivering. I think I started shivering, teeth chattering kind of. And then I just started into sobs, and it's sobs that make a lot of sound. Do you know what I mean? I'm
yes, heart-wrenching
sobs. Yeah, for an hour. And after that, that's when we went straight into the give me the codeine. And I'd probably gone through a patch of like moodily conversing with Emma, being like, where is Meg? Like, what is she doing?
Mm-hmm.
How dare she not be here? And after that, it was just this, the sleep with 6 hills to go, sleep with 3 hills to go. And Emma was there till the end. Emma and Meg just kind of interchanged who was with me. Mm-hmm. I think I probably did 1 hill and stopped, ate a little bit of food, sat in a warm car, did another hit. Like, it was, the attrition at that point was just, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how was the last hill?
The last hill,
what
do you know
were you thinking?
Yeah, there was no aspect of, I think I'd so spent my emotion. By the last hill, I was having a conversation, organising how we could leave the hill as soon as possible once I finished.
You just hated that
like,
hill at that point.
Let's get to the top of the hill, take a photo, let's leave. So it was like, maybe if you leave me 2/3 of the way up the hill, you grab your van, you pack up the crew spot, you meet me at the top. Like, it's so that we don't have to go through all this like waiting around, and like I just wanted to leave and get into a bed and that kind of thing. And so yeah, I obviously didn't want to walk down the hill. So that happened. I got to the top. I sat on the road. I looked haunted. Mm-hmm. Took a few photos. Mm-hmm. And that was it.
How did it feel? Were you relieved? Were you happy? Was
nothing?
Nothing.
I don't think that's how I remember it.
That's insane. Yeah, I guess that throughout those days you went through all the emotions, and like you said, you spent yourself, that when you got up there you're like, I have nothing more to give.
Because it was slow finish as well. Like, I was convinced earlier on that I'd got to the point where I was like, it's definitely going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so you've gone through all that emotion and what it's cost you. But yeah, I had very little to give right at the end, if nothing. But then the problem is, after these things, is you think that this is fantastic. I'm going to finish and I'm going to sleep for 20 hours straight and I'm going to eat all the delicious food. And the reality is you finish and you feel sick, so you can't really eat. And your body's like in so much trauma that you can't really sleep either. Mm-hmm. So finished and crawled into a bed at Meg's house, and it's like right there. And I think I slept for no more than an hour at a time, and not good sleep. Like, you've got these like shivers and sweats, and your body's now finished. It's starting to swell and inflammation going up everywhere. So it's not pleasant. And I think I basically like lay in that bed for about 2 days. Oh, yeah. We're in and out, you know. I think, so this is like Monday morning. I didn't sleep as much as you'd imagine I'd sleep, just on and off little bits here and there through Monday, eating pastries. and then I actually, compared to most times doing big projects, like, I could eat. By the evening, Meg made some incredible food. Food at Meg's house is very like Ottolenghi style, delicious food. And it was, I think, such a delicious meal. It's up there with some of the best in my life, I think. Mm-hmm. Which is weird because my tongue was numb for a week and I couldn't taste properly. Because you imagine you've spent 3 days not really sleeping, pouring all sorts of food and drink over your mouth and not giving it a chance to actually recover. So it's not just that it's a weird combination of things you're eating, tons and tons of sugar, very unhealthy. also, I was drinking an electrolyte liquid for 68 hours straight, probably single-handedly shortened my lifespan. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that your body doesn't know what's happening. It's just in a state of shock because all of a sudden you find yourself that you have to run for 68 hours. And again, like eat all kind of food.
And just to clarify, run is a strong word. Like it's...
You have to move for 68 hours and just barely sleep. So I guess that it just gets into that emergency mode. And then all of a sudden you just stop.
Yeah.
But your body is still in that emergency mode. So
yeah. I think it knows as well, because there's an aspect where quite soon after you actually stop, your body starts doing things that it didn't do during the run, even though you stopped. So stopped and slept for 45 minutes or stopped and slept for 10 minutes, and your body didn't do all these things that it starts doing once you've almost like, your brain knows that that's over. You can now do whatever it's doing, and swell up and inflame and try to heal and all those things.
When did you realize the magnitude of what you accomplished? When did you actually start enjoying it, if that ever happened? And how did it feel when you realized?
I think the first time I drove back to London a few days later, I can't really remember the timeline now. And on that drive back, I think it's the first time it kind of started to hit me. Even now, though, it's really hard for me to even try and remember how I felt during those patches. Like, we can laugh about it and chat about it now, but actually how I felt and the kind of trauma of it is hard to... Straight after, I definitely felt like I wasn't sure how I felt about it in terms of what it had cost. I didn't expect it to cost that much. And I think if I knew it would cost that much, I don't think I would have been able to face doing it. So there's an aspect of that. But when did it... Yeah, I guess it was nice when it got officially validated by the Everesting team.
Okay.
It's hard to say, really. It's hard to say.
Yeah, always happens when you have that big thing that you're planning for and you're getting ready for, and then it happens, because that was the main thing that you were thinking about, that you were getting ready for. It was such a big part of your life, and then it happens and you don't have that thing anymore. And
I think also, like, I have to remind myself that I did it. It doesn't feel like I've come out of it being like, yeah, I did that thing. It's very much a reminder that you did that hard thing and it's done. But it almost feels you're quite detached from it. I don't know.
I guess that it's something that just you know how it feels and what it means.
Sure.
It's not something that you can explain or transmit. It's not an experience that you can transmit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you think about just a small break, because I have to go to the toilet?
Yeah, me too.
And then maybe we can wrap up.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
I was living... The reason this all started on this hill is because my house is like right at the bottom of the hill.
Yeah, I remember.
And the first time I set up, I'd go into the house to use the loo. But it was, it's like...
But if you're just on a hill, you can just pee whatever you want, right?
Right, but like...
And also it feels great to pee outside.
Yeah. But if you like want to go for a shit, right? So, but this time I set up just into the woods. I set up like a toilet, like I dug a hole, or like...
Oh, really? Nice. So is there anything that you would like to touch on that we haven't covered?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, we've done a pretty good job, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So I'll just ask you some few questions more, and try to wrap up in somehow. So just try and speak into your microphone.
Yeah. Test. Is this working?
Yes,
we're back.
Yeah, we're
Great.
back. Yes, nice. So what were we saying? So we were talking about when did you realize the magnitude of what you were doing, and you said that when they approved it, the team behind the Everesting.
Yeah, I think that was a big thing. I think at that point I didn't really care whether they approved it or not.
Yeah.
I knew I had done it, and that was the key thing. But it's always nice. It's that nice little bit of validation. Yeah, it's processing the different aspects, and I don't think I'm fully done with that. I think that there's a lot of stages to go through, and one of them was kind of realizing the horror of it, and that I'd never fully be able to kind of verbalize what I had to go through. But then another aspect was, like we started off talking about, kind of finding the joy in suffering, finding the joy in the fact that being able to, setting these little targets, like after a while I'll stop and I'll sit down and I'll get 5 minutes break, setting these little mental aid stations, these kind of like, I get to sleep. I'm so tired, I get to sleep for 10 minutes, and the joy of that. Or I get a hot drink, I can have a hot drink. And to be fair, the level of support I had meant I was having coffees, teas, some nice chai tea, decaf coffee, caffeinated coffee, miso soup, ginger shots, burgers, cereal. We were getting bougie with the food, cruffins.
And is it an important part for you just to think about the inspiration that you would give to people hearing about you accomplishing something so big and so difficult to accomplish, or also just your friends? Like, for example, what you did was so inspiring that I decided to interview you and actually start the podcast.
Sure. Yeah, I think
because I wanted to do it for a long time, but I was always postponing it. I was like, I will do it. But then I don't know, like, you told me that, I just felt inspired. I was like,
well, I'm happy you've decided to do this, because it's like free therapy. Yeah. I think that, I don't know what I think. What was the question?
Again.
Oh, no. It may sound really selfish.
It's not.
Absolutely not. I don't think if my goal was to inspire people, I don't think I would be able to do it. I mean, that just could be me, how my brain works. I don't think I would have had the capacity to push to this level if that was the goal. The goal was, we talked about these big, big goals and having to break it up. And this was a big goal that I had to break up. But this is also part of a bigger goal that I have, that this is a step towards that bigger goal. And so for me, the inspiration was this as a goal, yes, but then also the bigger goal in the future. It's kind of setting yourself up to even have a chance at, achieving what you've decided is on your list. And I think part of that is, I always have these struggles where ideas get stuck in my head, and then I kind of have to do them. And it's almost like I'm doing someone else's to-do list.
Okay. Is it still that person?
Yeah, perhaps. Maybe what we're figuring out here is that I'm actually just controlled by someone. Maybe we're in a simulation and I'm not in control and someone is controlling my character.
Okay.
Which seeming more and more likely.
Okay. And do you feel like that person actually cares about you and wants you to find out something important and wants you to upgrade, or is that whatever entity is just like playing sick games on you? And
it doesn't feel like sick games that they're playing. It feels more like it's this weird combination of having a huge belief in myself, which is not necessarily a good thing. Like, it's a belief that I actually could achieve anything, which is stupid, because there's a lot of things that you just, it's like blind optimism, and then balanced with that
But is it? Because also last time we were talking that many times with these feats, it's mostly people thinking that it's not possible to do it until someone does it, and they just push the boundary, and then you keep doing it, and so it's actually very possible. You just have to get over that wall of no, that's not feasible.
Yeah. Yes. I think I guess it's two big things. It's this blind optimism and thinking that I can accomplish anything, and that's totally in the sense that I mean that's totally unreasonable, because
I think from what you told me for the last, I don't know, hour and something, is that actually that blind optimism is not fake. It's actually like a real thing, and the opposite is what's fake. And like that voice in your mind that tells you, "Oh, stop! You will not be able to do it." That's actually what's lying. While the blind optimism is what's the truth is. You know.
Yeah, maybe.
Because-
maybe. But in the sense that it's this blind optimism, but twinned with a really haunting, deep, guttural fear that I will never accomplish anything worthwhile. And so it's not particularly pleasant, and it's pushed by this internal voice that's like, you could do X, and therefore you haven't done X, so you're worthless, right? And so that's the fight, is this like continually trying to do these things that pop into my head, because my brain or whatever person controlling me is like, you could do this random thing. And then the other voice is like, you haven't done that yet, so you're worthless. Right?
Okay.
So then when I actually accomplish the thing, if I do, it's not a sense of, yeah, I did that thing. It's a relief that I can take that out of my brain and forget about it. So it's like, oh, fantastic. I don't have to live with this horrible feeling that I didn't do that thing.
Okay.
If you know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying. It's
This
twisted.
is really turning into therapy now.
Yeah, it is twisted, but I get what you're saying. So are you planning your next thing that it's stuck in your brain, or is your brain at peace right now, or is the person controlling you just giving you a break?
Yeah, I definitely get breaks. Which
Okay,
is nice. Thank you,
yeah.
person in my brain. But there is a big future plan, and it's just steps that I see to get there. And so there are things I want to do to get there. So it's definitely in the planning stage.
So what do you think you have to improve to be able to accomplish your next challenge, even if you don't know what your next challenge is? Like what you noticed from this last run?
I need to get faster. I think
But
that
how can you do that? By improving the quality of your sleep, or like eating in a different way?
Yeah, I'm pretty focused on eating well and sleep, which obviously for anyone who has an intense life or like a serious job or anything like that becomes quite hard. But the goal is, I think basically I proved to myself that my mind is in a really, like, has the ability to take me places I didn't realize it could. And so I think I need to do more work on the physical side so that I can do those same things but faster, so that I can achieve the big future goals I have. So there's definitely an aspect of being like, okay, like mentally you can do this.
Yeah,
and
because
so
what I noticed is that you accomplished something so hard and with no professional support. Like there was not like a structure. Even if, like you said, you had friends helping you and you had a team and everything and everyone was putting effort, it's not like having someone that's making a diet, like a customized diet for it, and just like having some particular I don't know, food that you can eat that is packed with calories and it's efficient, it's easier to digest. And even just sleeping, like if you have it's great to have a van and everything.
Sure.
But if you have something that's optimized for it,
Sure. Yeah.
because you talked about blankets, but
Yeah. Professional masseuse
so there is,
right there.
yeah, I think there is a huge room for improvement. You can get more technical about it, and
Yeah. I mean, if anyone wants to sponsor me with free massages, food, drink, I'll take anything at this point.
What were the tablets again?
Sorry, say that again.
What was the tablet you really wanted?
Oh, codeine.
Yeah, codeine.
Yeah.
Yes,
Codeine
some
sponsor,
codeine.
anyone? Please?
Is there anything else that you would like to share? No, well, actually, I have another question. Do you feel like you're a different person that you were before? And what do you think is, or what do you feel is the main difference? And if you went back, would you do it again?
Yes, I'd do it again.
Mm-hmm.
As in, like, I'm happy with the path I chose. I feel completely aligned with being the person that I think is true to who I am. And that's weird, given we've just been talking about being controlled and all of that. But in the sense that I would be happy, content to die on the path I'm on, because I feel like I'm not wasting my life. I am step by step pursuing what I feel drawn to pursue.
Mm-hmm.
And there's definitely been times in my life where it's felt like I haven't been on a path that feels like I'm pursuing what is kind of true to me as a unique person. So in that sense, it feels like a real legitimization that I'm doing, what it feels like I should be doing. Or I want to do, in quotes, the person who's controlling me wants me to do. Yeah.
It does sound like therapy at this point, because like I'm also therapizing myself, because that's what conversation is, right? Like you're sharing some thoughts with me or some experiences, then I take those experiences and thoughts and just like interpret them and try to expand my own understanding of myself and the world, right? So myself as well, when I was younger and I was just pursuing a different path, I went to university and I just started working in an office, and it's still like a completely normal life and there's nothing wrong with it, but I just felt like I was not doing what was true to myself. I was not, like you said, following my true path. And then I just decided to completely change and pursue videography and filmography, etc. And again, like me as well, like I had that voice in my mind, or like that voice in myself that was telling me, yeah, this is what everyone is telling you to do, just pursue this path because it's safe and that's what makes more sense rationally to do. But at the same time, I was just drawn to do this other thing that I didn't know where it would take me. I didn't know if I would be successful, but I just decided to do it. And this is kind of twisted because you're saying that voice is the one that's controlling you and that now you're in control. But what if it's the other way around, that you're actually, like, when you're just like following the inertia in your life, you're just following a set path, that's where you're actually being controlled. And when you decide to do something that's completely different, that's just true to yourself, that's when you're actually being yourself. And with time, you just develop that voice. You just like, it speaks louder and louder. And
it could be that the voice, in quotes, controlling me is the most me part of me, for sure. That's very true. It could be you could start to see it more as the you is the one that's happy coasting, and that the voice is the one that's the kind of the headmaster being like, no, we're doing this better, no, we're taking this direction, I'm not going to let you feel happy and content and comfortable doing those things, this is what you need to be doing. And that is, like I said, it gives, you get breaks, and now I feel okay because I'm on the path. But if I don't do anything for the next 2 years, I mean, I will not be in a good place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was really, really deep. It's twisted. Yeah. Because when I decided to change path and just do whatever I thought was truest to me, again I started feeling like you said. I started feeling like if I die today or if I die tomorrow, that's fine. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I will not feel any regrets.
Yeah.
And that kind of gives you a peaceful feeling and attitude, even if it changes, like you said, with time. You still have to keep pursuing that thing or that
and correcting yourself so that you're like correcting your direction and things like that.
Yeah. Because I actually think that it's your survival instinct that tries to push you towards things that make you feel safer and where you're more comfortable, where you're just existing, you know? While that other part of you is just trying to push the boundaries and try to make you do things that you didn't think were possible. And so I think it's the other way around, or at least that's what I'm realizing in this last couple of years, that you just have to follow your path, and each one of us has a really, really different and unique one, and you are the only one that knows where it leads, and you have to discover it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
It's a nice end to the therapy.
Yeah, for me as well. Yeah, especially because it's important to have this kind of conversations, because sometimes you just think that you're crazy, that you have this approach to life. But then when you find, because most of the time where you go to someone and you tell them about a huge goal that you have that makes no sense, that's what they would tell you. It makes no sense. Why would you go for that?
Yeah.
That's so risky. And they would just convince you to not do it, or they would be negative about it.
Yeah.
But it's actually like you can do it, and you just need to go for it. And
you can pursue the thing. It doesn't matter how hard it is. But the key thing to take away is that it's okay to cry in public. On the tube, on your bike, at the bus stop, in an important meeting, at breakfast, with good friends, with less good friends, with your boss, on your own.
For sure it's important
Just get the tears out.
For sure it's liberating. Nice. Is there anything that you would like to share?
No, I think that's...
Yeah, I think that we went through everything. Okay, this was an amazing conversation. I'm very happy that you decided to pick up this challenge. And I'm just happy that people like you exist, really, because first of all, it just confirms...
So kind of you.
First of all, because it confirms some of the attitudes that I have towards life. Again, going for the crazy thing and not just for the thing that everyone is doing and the safest thing. And also it's inspiring, because when you see someone that does something so hard, it kind of motivates you throughout your everyday life, because you just say, if someone did that, so I can manage to do this thing that is smaller,
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's exactly that. I picked up running because I was inspired by other incredible people.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a video that was called What It's Like to Run 135 Miles. The thumbnail was someone's feet that were totally destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, that sounds like something I should do.
It could be the same with this conversation as well. Or like if someone sees any of your content, they would be just...
Sadly, my feet were actually in really good condition. So, they were actually the best possible condition of any part of my body or mind.
But yeah, thanks for the conversation, and catch up on the next challenge that you will have in the future.
Perfect. Look forward to it. Thanks, Sam.
No worries.